Good afternoon, CFA Institute. My name is Robert Nelson. I'm so excited to be talking to you today. I received my accounting degree in 1988, my Master's of Business and Finance, MBA in Finance in 1989, my CFA charter in 1993. As soon as I received my CFA charter, I began advocating on behalf of the CFA charter because of its importance. What I did is I worked with Michael Casillas and Ray D'Angelo to change the laws of the United States of America. We flew around, met at various locations, Pittsburgh, Vancouver, what have you, and we met with the North American Association of Security Administrators to change the laws of the land. What laws did we change? We made it very important to these security administrators to understand the value of the CFA charter so that a CFA would not have to take the Series 7, 63, etc. I remember a seminal meeting in Vancouver. CFA Institute, it was Amer at the time, flew me to Vancouver to make a presentation. I remember that meeting. I remember the power of actually changing the laws of this land. It was fascinating. It was fantastic. Today is another very important time in the history of our capital markets, much more important than trying to waive some exams, although that was very important. Recently, in fact, I changed jobs and the new employer thought I had to take the Series 7. I knew I didn't have to take it. I said, that's fine, I'll take it. It doesn't really matter to me. I started the process of taking it, and this chief compliance officer came up and said, actually, you don't have to take it because you have the CFA charter. And I knew that because of the work that we had done. 20 years ago, I knew that. I understand from Linda Rittenhouse that that work still goes on today, and that fact, and globally, the CFA charter is recognized and certain exams are waived. The reason I'm talking to you today is much more important than that. It's much more important than that. There's an extremely important opportunity that the CFA Institute needs to pivot right now and devote resources to something that's very important. I have to go back to 2008 and 2009. During the financial crisis, there was something extremely important that happened that is ripping through capital markets today. What is it? I gotta tell you, don't throw anything at the screen. I'm going to say it. It's Bitcoin. There, I said it. Okay. What do I mean about Bitcoin? Digital assets, distributed ledger technology, blockchain. I'm sure you've heard of blockchain. This is a big deal. I started studying it in 2014. I actually dismissed it. I read the article by Mark Andreessen in the New York Times. We talked about it in our investment committee. It didn't make any sense to me. Internet money, some guy in Japan making money on his computer. We talked about it. The one thing I remember, Ray Dalio from Bridgewater at the time said, currencies are kind of my thing. And Ray, Mr. Dalio, is a very important investor, and that really got me thinking. I don't know what Mr. Dalio actually did with respect to Bitcoin, but I do know it got me thinking. And to be honest, we really didn't do much with it, and I forgot about it. Late 2016, I noticed it was still around, and I was like, what? And it was pushing 1,000, and what's going on? Well, the work that I was doing at the time was working with 75 of the wealthiest families here in northern Indiana, and so I was really focused on financial planning. In fact, I had gone ahead and gotten my certified financial planner designation to really deliver top quality services to these families. So I wasn't really doing investment research, but I was going on a ski trip and I had some time and I was investing my own funds, and I really love to do investment research, so I brought the research with me. And this was just an amazing plane ride. For 3 hours, I immersed myself in various things, but Bitcoin was the thing that really jumped out at me. Through the ski trip, I was skiing during the day and I was researching digital assets at night, and it was just amazing. And I was kind of talking to people about it, but I didn't really want to share it because it was kind of too weird, kind of too out there. I got back to Indiana and I immediately began investing, and it was just very fascinating. As I became investing, I started learning about what was happening. I learned about how China was clamping down and the volatility and the various exchanges and the wallets and things like that. I was doing research. Because I had a day job, and it was a pretty full day job taking care of these families, I was having to get up earlier in the morning to do the research. I started at 5 a.m., then 4 a.m., and then 3 a.m. because it was just something I would just get me out of bed, and I would have that time to dig in and understand it. And I was making investments. I was making some investments that were paying off nicely, and I was doing more research and more research. I came across something that I think the CFA Institute really needs to take seriously. I came across something called the Bitcoin Foundation. And let me tell you what the mission of the Bitcoin Foundation is. The mission of the Bitcoin Foundation is to advocate on perhaps of the Bitcoin community. And actually, I lost my notes on the Bitcoin Foundation. I apologize for that. But there is a mission statement of the Bitcoin Foundation. Let me jump to what they've formed. They've formed something called C4. It's this offshoot of the Bitcoin Foundation. C4 stands for the Cryptocurrency Certification Consortium. It's a mouthful. That's why we call it C4. The thing that C4 did for society at large, and for me specifically, is they created something called the Certified Bitcoin Professional. Now you have to keep in mind, I was researching this, I was looking through the internet, but when I found the Certified Bitcoin Professional, it sort of brought everything together for me that I could learn in a way that really helped me to understand Bitcoin, digital assets, distributed ledger technology, etc. Let me tell you some of the things I studied to become a certified Bitcoin professional. History of money and ledger-based economics. Fascinating, going back to history, trying to think about what is money. Basic cryptography. I had no idea about cryptography. I love math. I studied calculus in college. I went back to that deep calculus to understand cryptography. It was fascinating. The same thing that secures our cell phones and computer services is now securing the Bitcoin network. And just learning cryptography was really neat. Bitcoin basics, that's really interesting. The community, the addresses, keys, transactions. Mining, oh my word. Mining is really fascinating. Today, the difference between mining and users or hardware and software is playing out in incredible volatility. Keep in mind, when I started investing, it was less than $1,000. As I tape today, it's about $8,700. I did a dry run of this talk. It was $7,200. That's fascinating. It's very volatile, though. I've seen 25% drops like that. So very volatile, and that's why I want the CFA Institute to get involved, to talk about this asset, talk about these assets in general, learn about them, and begin to take a lead in terms of advocating for regulators on what's required to bring these to investors. Let me get back to the Certified Bitcoin Professional exam. Wallets, clients, and key management, extremely important, much different than traditional custody of assets. And lastly, Bitcoin commerce. Most people think of Bitcoin commerce because they don't see much of it and they wonder, well, what if Amazon accepts it? They will someday, but that's really not the point. That's just one aspect of the Certified Bitcoin Professional. Here's why I'm talking to you today. I believe that in Hong Kong, 2018 is an incredibly important opportunity for the CFA Institute to take a leading role to talk about digital assets. I'd like to be part of that development, but we cannot wait until 2018 in Hong Kong. We need to begin right now putting assets towards this. And I would like to suggest that the CFA Institute form a committee, just like we formed back in '93 under the leadership of Michael Casillas, went through '97 with Ray D'Angelo, and that's where I got to meet Linda Rittenhouse. We made a lot of good changes working with regulators. That's the time right now. We need to begin right now here in late 2017, work through 2018. When we get to Hong Kong, sure, I can do a 15-minute talk, but I think more important than that, I'd suggest a panel. That's what I'd suggest. I'd suggest form a committee. We get the committee going. When we get to Hong Kong, we have a panel and we talk about Bitcoin, and we can have pros and cons. But I believe that it's very important the CFA Institute get going on this right now. Let me recap. I'm doing this quick take because the 2018 Hong Kong gives me the opportunity to give a talk. That's fine. If you want to give me the 15 minutes, I'll take it. But I really think the CFA Institute should move much quicker. I think the opportunity is much larger and the risks are much larger. And that the CFA Institute, to remain and stay relevant, should really take a leading role. I'm not saying I speak for the CFA Institute. Of course I do not. I would love the opportunity to talk to CFA charter holders. In fact, I'm going to a conference in New York City this Tuesday, paying my own funds, driving out there. In fact, I should tell you, I actually quit my job in August of this year because from a regulatory perspective, it was very difficult for me to continue to do my job and not talk about the fascinating things happening in Bitcoin and in my own portfolio, and to do my normal compliance on a quarterly basis. It was too much really to ask of my organization given what I was doing. Even though I was on the national committee and I was advocating at the national level at Bitcoin 1,000, 2,000, and 3,000, it was at Bitcoin 3,000, I said, I'm sorry, I'm going to go and focus full time on Bitcoin research. So back to the CFA Institute. The most important thing is the CFA Institute needs to pivot today. I've already started conversations with some very wonderful people at the Institute, including Linda Rittenhouse and a few others. So I really think in the capital formation, capital structure, if you just look at what happened this year, oh my word, in the second quarter, everyone was asleep. The hedge funds were asleep. They missed it. They were talking about shorting REIT stocks, and I was studying Bitcoin and going, wow, Ether, wow, initial coin offerings. It wasn't until after the second quarter when the SEC wrote their letter, there started to be some interest. The third quarter of this year, hedge funds took notice. There was over 100 announcements of either digital currency investments or opening funds specifically for digital currency.
May we have your attention, please?
Excuse
the
me.
library is closing in 15 minutes. Computers will shut down in 5 minutes. If you need to call for a ride home, please do so at this time. Please check out your materials at a self-check machine or the circulation desk. Thank you.
Pardon the interruption. So, as I was saying, it's very important to pivot right now. Basically, three things I'd be looking at that I'd suggest for the committee. Certainly, if you want me to do the 15-minute quick take, be very excited about doing that. Second thing that I think would perhaps be better would be a panel, and I'd be happy to be on the panel. And the third thing, which I think would be very important, would be to form a committee and get it going and to talk about it. So I just wanted to go back to this conference briefly. I'll be seeing some folks in New York City. It's a major conference. It's called Consensus Invest. I'm already working with the Bitcoin Foundation and C4. I'm already advocating on their behalf. I've already written exam questions. I'll be meeting with Michael Perklin, who's the president of C4. He's incredibly smart. He's a technologist, though. Knows very little about regulation and investments. But I'm already educating him about the importance of the CFA Institute. There are going to be other CFA charter holders there. I've already reached out to them, and I'm forming sort of a meetup. I hope to get about a half dozen, maybe a dozen CFA charter holders, get them together for a lunch at the committee and pick their brain. I'll also be working with Michael Perklin at this committee and others, and also working with some media outlets. The Wall Street Journal will be there, and there's a publication called CoinDesk. Now again, I'll be advocating, for the most part, I cannot speak for the CFA Institute. Certainly I cannot do that. I can't even speak for the Bitcoin Foundation or C4, but Michael Perklin can, and I'll be talking with Michael Perklin and introducing him to some of these media contacts. You should be seeing some stories, I hope, in December here about Michael Perklin. Google that name, look it up, or go back and look up the work we did in 93 to 97. Be happy to talk about that. It's the same thing over again. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you have a great day, and let me know if I can help. Thanks.